have them now, that's fine too.
Wait, yes. Every year.
Ready to go, Big Joe wanted to hit record or something. Oh, I can't misspeak because it's being recorded.
Well, if, people were not able to be here, yeah, can tune.
No, and I think, yes, that would be good.
This is the awkward moment while we are trying to get.
Technical material for this,
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Good to see you. I'd like to introduce to you Jackie Mish, who is going to give you an overview of our proposed zoning changes in zoning district. If you didn't have an opportunity, I'm Carol Gustafson, by the way. If you didn't have a chance to sign the clipboard, it would be greatly appreciated. I'll send it around again. Put down your contact information. If you wish some follow-up or answers to questions, that would be great. And I'm going to assume, did everyone get a copy of the handouts? If not, I can hand those off to you. And there is a comment form. Anyone need one? Well, great. Well, we'll begin and take it away, Jackie. Take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. So as Mayor said, I'm here to provide.
Excuse me, I'm crossing.
Give you a moment. Here to share some information about the Main Street zoning district. So this is two new zoning districts that the village is considering. We're still in the drafting stage, so your feedback is important because what we hear from you and subsequent input from the public will be used to inform what the final version will be. We're interested in hearing your comments, both about what the rules would be for the zoning district, and then also where we would map it on the Main Street corridor. So keep that in mind as you listen to the presentation, that we are interested in your feedback on those two elements of the zoning district. So this project came about because the village adopted a Main Street plan. How many of you have seen this plan before, have some familiarity with it? Great. Well, this is a plan that was prepared by a consulting group called Place Foundry, and they specialize in redevelopment. And this is a blueprint basically for the Main Street corridor. And that plan laid out a vision for what the Main Street could be in the future. So as you can see on the screen, their vision is that Main Street in Roscoe would be a walkable village center where residents and visitors are connected to commerce, community, and nature. So that's kind of the aspirational goal for the district. And that plan also included principles that they wanted to achieve. And so in the future, the idea is that Main Street would be a gathering place, so a place that people come to socialize and shop, work, and play. It's a vibrant economy, so it's an area that supports new businesses as well as entrepreneurs and existing businesses. It's a choice destination, so it feels like a special, unique place with its own character that draws people in. Seamlessly connected, meaning it's walkable and it allows for bikes and all forms of transportation. Resilient environment, meaning we bring in nature whenever we can and pursue sustainable practices. And then also celebrating Roscoe's heritage and its history and its small town character. So those are kind of the principles behind that plan. This plan also included kind of a long-term, short-term, long-term and short-term recommendations for what future infill development or redevelopment could include. So as new buildings are built or buildings are rehabbed, what could that look like? So we won't go into great depth on these plans, but we do have a few boards available here. So if you're interested in seeing what those concept vision documents look like, you can take a look. Another recommendation from this plan was the idea of creating two new zoning districts. And the idea here was we don't want zoning to be an obstacle for people reinvesting or investing for the first time in their properties on Main Street. And so could we create two new zoning districts that are really flexible and allow for a lot of different options for investment for property owners to consider so that they're motivated to do something with their properties? The plan envisioned two different districts. One is kind of the magenta district. So that's properties immediately fronting on Main Street. And the idea in the plan was that this would be the most intensely developed, most vibrant area of the village. So we'd want to see mixed use development. And when we say mixed use, we typically mean one building that would contain commercial or non-residential uses on the ground floor and residential on the upper stories. It could also mean residential and commercial on a single site as well. So that Magenta District would be the most, where the taller buildings are with the most development. And then the idea was also that there would be a Main Street Edge district. So that's sort of our transition district between that more intense district and the surrounding neighborhoods. So sort of a gentle transition. The Edge district was envisioned as being more residential in character and in use, whereas the core district would be with some residential, but also more commercial and mixed use. So we took a look at this initial idea and evaluated your current zoning pattern. So this is your current zoning map here. There's also a great board over here that illustrates that a little more clearly. But I think what this map tells us is there's quite a lot of things going on Main Street right now. We have a wide range of zoning districts, including multifamily, commercial, office, all kind of mixed up in the same area. Not a bad thing necessarily, but you know, there's kind of a scattered pattern of zoning. And so with these new zoning districts, we're going to start having a more cohesive zoning pattern in the downtown. So from there, this is what we proposed for starting to implement the idea that was laid out in the Main Street plan. So here's the idea that was from the plan, and then this second map is how we're proposing to begin a rezoning for Main Street in Roscoe. So we proposed just starting with two core intersections in Main Street. So one is Williams Drive, Hodges Run on the north side. The other is the Bridge Street and Main Street intersection on the south side. We want to start out with our two strongest intersections where there's the most development potential. And we'll use those sort of as pilot projects to see how well these districts perform and understand where those opportunities are. So the idea here is these properties would be proactively rezoned to these new districts, which I'll explain more about what those districts mean shortly, which would give these property owners more options, more flexibility with what they can do in with their property and kind of help implement the goals of that Main Street plan. So here's just a zoom on those two areas. So we do have boards. These two boards are identical, just showing where those districts will be mapped. We'd love your input on where if you think we should change the boundaries, we should rezone more areas or less. We'd love to hear from you. We also have a few handouts here. We don't have enough for everyone, but if you want to take a look at the aerial photo without all that color on top of it, just to get a sense of what businesses are underneath there, we do have that available as well. So when you're, many of you probably don't spend a lot of time reading zoning code, but a zoning district typically regulates two main things. One is uses. So what kind of uses can be in this district? So in the case of these zoning districts, they allow for both residential and commercial uses, and we have specific lists in the code text that states what uses are permitted by special use, which are permitted by right, and which are not permitted. Zoning districts also, so in addition to use, so what uses can be there, they also regulate the location of the building on the site. So that tends to be through building setback requirements, building height requirements, and lot coverage. And so I'll walk you guys through what we're envisioning for these new districts. So in terms of land uses, so what uses are permitted in each district? In our core district, so just as a reminder, that's the district right up on Main Street. We're allowing for residential uses, we're permitting mixed use buildings, so a building with commercial and residential in the same building. Multifamily dwellings, townhomes, so attached units that are usually have staircase and are attached on either side, and accessory dwelling units. And I'll talk more about what those look like toward the end of the presentation. In the Main Street Edge district, which again is our transition district next to Main Street, we have a wider range of residential uses permitted. That district is again intended to be more oriented to residential development. So we have a wider range of residential uses allowed there. So the same list as we saw for the other district, but also permitting cottage courts, which I will explain on a future slide. 2 families, a duplex or 2 flats, single family, and again, accessory dwelling units. So here's just an example of a project that we worked on in another community of what a 3-story mixed-use building could potentially look like. You can see the commercial here with 2 floors of residential above. So that's a typical example of what you might hope to see for a good quality mixed-use building. Here's another example of a mixed-use building. And on the right is an example of like a 3-story apartment building that might potentially be suitable on the Main Street corridor. So all of these would be permitted in both of those districts. Townhomes, so I tried to describe that before, basically attached side-by-side units. These could be in groups of 4 or more, typically. And then the cottage court, which is an emerging idea in urban design in which there's typically one larger lot with multiple single-family homes centered around a shared green space or maybe a courtyard or a garden. And typically the garages are at the rear. And so this is another way to get a little more density, but still with that familiar single-family character, and can be a little bit more affordable in some cases. So those are our residential uses. In terms of non-residential, our lists are pretty similar. I'm expecting we'll see more market demand for non-residential along Main Street, and less so as you get further from Main Street. But both districts do allow for quite a wide range of retail, restaurant, and other commercial uses. You'll see in the core district, the P indicates that these uses are permitted by right. And the S indicates that they're permitted by special use, so they have to go through a little more review by the village before they could be approved. We have more residential uses permitted by right in the core district than we do in the edge. But again, these districts are very flexible, really allow for a wide range of different uses with careful village oversight. So now I wanted to talk to you about more like the position of the building on the lot. That's another thing that zoning does regulate. And a goal of these zoning districts is to achieve what we would call downtown building. And what do I mean when I say downtown buildings? These are a few examples just from Roscoe that you probably recognize. A downtown building typically comes right up to the sidewalk or very close to the sidewalk. Typically a very minimal side setbacks as well. They build out a lot. They use most of their lot. And then they have some parking on the street. Maybe they have parking behind, but it's not like a suburban shopping center where you've got the big parking lot in front and the building way at the back. And so this was the vision in the plan for the type of building that Roscoe wants to see along Main Street. And as you can see here, you do have a few examples right now. And the plan would envision adding a few more. So these are images from that Main Street plan. So if you've looked at that plan before, these may look familiar to you, but examples of attractive downtown style building. And here's that image I showed before. So I had mentioned that these images were from that Main Street plan, and you can see they had done some renderings about what a future build out of Roscoe could potentially look like. This is just a concept, but if you spend a little time here, you can see we've got that downtown style building with these new buildings right up against the sidewalk. So that's what the plan is hoping to achieve. Okay, now we get into the good stuff, which is building heights and lot coverage. So building heights, an important part of the zoning district. If we have the building be too small, they may not have enough value for the property owner to justify doing a new building. Usually they need to be collecting rent from a certain number of tenants or residents in order to justify the cost to build a big new building like that. But if we have the buildings too short, or if the building's too tall, it would really change the character of Roscoe and Main Street in particular. And so it's a delicate balance in finding what those optimal building heights should be. So what we're suggesting is that if you're going to build a new building on Main Street in the core district, we want to see that building be a minimum of 2 stories, so it would be consistent with those example images that I just showed you. And then a maximum of 4 stories. Most of those example images I showed you, I think were 3 stories. This code is proposing 4. And then if you are doing a 4-story building, we would require that 4th story be stepped back from Main Street. Here's an example of how a building step back could look. The reason we have that in there, that requirement in there, is because that reduces the apparent size of the building as viewed from the street. So as somebody's walking by, it might kind of look like a 3-story building, but there's actually a 4th story kind of tucked away. And so that's a way to get more density, more value out of the building, but not completely change the character of the community. And then in the Edge District, we just have a simple maximum of 3 stories in that more residentially oriented district. In both of those districts, we are allowing for more lot coverage than we would in some of our other zoning districts, so that building can take up quite a bit more of the lot, similar to those downtown style buildings that you have already here on Main Street. And then when it comes to setbacks, as I mentioned before, many downtown buildings have very minimal setbacks. That's the case with both of these zoning districts as well. So for that core district, we are requiring actually that buildings would be either right up to the sidewalk, so a 0-foot setback, or no more than 15 feet from the sidewalk. So there's kind of a 15-foot area between the front of the sidewalk where that front of that building needs to be, because we want to see downtown style development. In terms of side setbacks, depending on the context, it'd be 0 or 10 feet from the side lot line, and then 0-foot setback requirement from the rear. Now, typically, when these buildings actually get built, these 0-foot setbacks might not actually result. The builder may not choose to use that 0-foot setback. They may choose to set it back a bit off the property line based on their operations, based on how they want to build the building. But this basically what this does is we don't place any limitations on where that setback is. They can decide where they want that building to be placed. In the Edge District, so again, a residentially oriented district, we're having buildings must be located between 5 and 15 feet from the sidewalk, so they can be a little bit further back. Or they should be a little bit further back from the sidewalk because they are residential in character. And then similar side and rear setbacks for those buildings as well. So thinking about those heights and setbacks may sound a little scary because we're allowing someone to build a lot of flexibility to build a big building if the lot allows for it. And so a really important part of these zoning districts is to have built-in design standards. So that gives the village the ability to weigh in on what these buildings look like and assure that we'll have quality development. So in our core district on Main Street, we've got a few key things built into the code to ensure that we have quality buildings. One is that we really want to see mixed use on that intersection of Bridge Street and Main Street. So if a project comes forward at that key intersection, these design standards would require that at least 50% of the ground floor space in those buildings should be retail or commercial, rather than just a multifamily building on that corner. That's a really key corner that has good demand for commercial. And if we can't get it in there, we might lose our opportunity to have new retail and commercial on Main Street. Yes.
Do you want to buy my house?
You can ask them, you can ask those people.
Main Bridge.
Oh, you're on the other corner?
Thanks.
Other design standards, we want to see that building entrance be oriented to Main Street. We want to see like a nice awning, a nice defined entrance right on Main Street rather than at the back of the building. And we want to ensure that we have good pedestrian access. The details of this are in the draft code. I'd be happy to explain more to those of you who are interested, but basically we have provisions that prevent kind of flat unadorned walls with no windows and doors. We've got requirements to make sure it's an articulated and interesting facade. At least 50% of all sides of the building need to be using high quality materials. And our draft code has a list of what examples of high quality materials are. I mentioned clearly defined entrance. Did I skip a slide? I think Yeah, I might have skipped some information, but clearly defined entrance again, as I mentioned, and then in that edge district where we have single family, we want to see the garage at the back so that home is oriented to Main Street. I think what's missing in this slide here is that we also have requirements for a minimum number of percentage of the facade on that core district needs to be windows and doors. So again, that's helping to avoid the issue with blank facades. When it comes to parking, we're still talking through this, but right now the draft is that we won't have minimum parking requirements for residential. We'll rely on the developer to determine how much parking they want to provide on site for their residential uses. For commercial, we are requiring some parking for anything over 3,000 square feet of commercial. So this will rely more heavily on parking on street than your typical commercial districts will. One thing that we're exploring and have included in the draft code is that if they have street parking nearby, they can count some of those spaces toward their parking requirements. And then lastly, we will, since we do want this to be a multimodal district, an area where people can walk and bike, requiring a small amount of bike parking. I won't go into this too heavily, but your code right now does have landscaping requirements for all new development. And so we've modified these to be more appropriate for a downtown context. And so there will be some amount of landscaping required, particularly for development that includes parking lots. We want to see some nice landscape perimeters and then potential for planters on the front of the building as well. Here's that list of high quality materials. We'd love your input on what we should be adding to this list potentially. Brick, stone, stucco, engineered wood look panels, decorative metal paneling. We also have language here that allows us to make interpretations about other materials that we didn't anticipate that may come forward. I told you I would come back to accessory dwelling units. How many people are familiar with this concept? Has anyone seen this? A little bit. So an accessory dwelling unit is a newer idea in the urban planning world where it's a way to bring in more dwelling units in a neighborhood without fundamentally changing the character of that neighborhood. And so it's basically like a little dwelling unit on a single family lot that is meets building codes. It's not necessarily a tiny home. It's a little bigger than that, but it's accessory to the primary house on that lot. It can be attached. So you could add an addition and somebody could build it out as with a kitchen and a bedroom and all the things required by the building code with separate access. And that could be attached to the primary residence, or it could be a separate little cottage like the one you see on the slide here. So that's something that, yeah, it needs to have a kitchen and a bathroom, you know, all the things that the building code requires. Similarly, the code also includes accessory commercial uses on the Main Street core district. So that's a similar idea, it can be attached or detached, but it's intended for commercial uses. So this is kind of a new idea. It's been done in a few communities, but it's a great opportunity to encourage entrepreneurship and startup businesses. So right now it's hard to get a retail business started, rents are high, there's a lot of obstacles in your way. This could be a great place to kind of try some things out and see what your customers respond to. And so this is something that is contemplated in these zoning districts as well. I won't go through all of these, but we do have detailed standards for both the accessory dwelling units and the accessory commercial units. Basically, we want to see that those building materials need to match the principal structure or be nicer than the principal structure. We have setback requirements for them. We have design standards for them. Say that those building materials need to be high quality. Those will be carefully vetted. Design review will be required to make sure they're compatible with the lot and the surrounding building. And then this is something on our to-do list. This is not something that we have completed yet, but the code does allow for this idea of pre-approved plans. And this is the idea behind this is to really kind of get the village out of the way of review and provide a kind of a fast track for a really good project. A few communities have been working with this idea already. South Bend, Indiana has a neighborhood infill program where they have these several there's actually quite a bit more than these shown here, but pre-approved house plans in South Bend, where basically if you use the pre-approved plans, you have an expedited permit and zoning review process. Because we've already signed off on it, we know we love it, we know it's good. Let's get out of the way and let them do it. So that's something that the village is contemplating doing. My suggestion would be to start with the accessory dwelling units as per pre-approved plans and see how that goes. And then from there, we can see if we want to do it for other types of buildings as well. Right, this is my last slide. So what are the next steps? Thank you again for your attention. We hope to hear from you about your thoughts on this. We'll continue to work with the Zoning Board of Appeals and staff to refine the draft districts and the maps. From there, we intend to have a revised draft. We'll review that with the Zoning Board of Appeals. Probably have a few more tweaks after that, review it again with them and take that to public hearing. At which anyone would be welcome to speak on this proposal. Zoning Board of Appeals would make a recommendation and then it would go to the village board for approval. That's what we're looking at right now. I'd be happy to take any questions. But before I do, we do have comment forms here, as the mayor mentioned. If you have a comment, I would really encourage you to write it on the form. If you tell me that's good, but there's no guarantee I'm gonna remember that by the time I get back home. So if you have it in writing, that really is a big help to us. And thank you for your attention.
No, just feel free, Alex Jenkins here. What's her name?
Meredith.
Meredith.
Sorry.
No, Meredith is here as well. If you have questions for them, I'm sure they'd be happy to look at the boards with you and answer your questions. If you've got questions about the Main Street plan, I'm here, our mayor's here, two of our trustees are here tonight. I'm sure they'd be more than happy to answer questions or give you their thoughts about what's going on and obviously give us your input. We appreciate it. So thank you for waiting.
You just showed us some drawing of the houses that you already have designed for it already.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned,
Mhm.
do you have anything for the commercial property?
Right, this time we don't have any pre-approved plans for anything.
I think there'll be a future phase as we get to those.
Oh, you'd be in a different phase.
The pre-approved portions.
I have a question.
Sure.
So I was looking through this and this is all Greek and new to me, so, but I was noticing that, there's a lot of language about parking. And so, for the commercial spaces that are 3,000 square foot is the minimum. And then after that, you have a requirement for every 500 square feet after that, is that what you're saying?
So if your commercial space is 2,000 square feet, you would not have parking requirement.
Okay. So my question is that obviously there's already buildings all along Main Street and all these corridors. How do we then foresee parking
Yeah,
if there's no requirements for parking? And then how do we encourage development without providing spaces for that development?
So I think there's a couple things I would think about. One is, for the most part, we'd be relying on on-street parking for this commercial uses that you mentioned. So our on-street network will really be responsible for kind of absorbing those parking. There may be a point where the village want to explore a parking study to see how it's going, if they want to make any adjustments to the policy. One other thing is that while we're not requiring a minimum amount of parking, developers would likely want to provide a minimum amount of parking based on their business model, or, they don't feel they can lease residential units without parking, and so they can kind of decide how much they can provide.
So my concern is with allowing, the setbacks at 0. And then not requiring parking, that you're kind of creating a potential problem for like, where's the refuse gonna go for, those type of things. Like if you have garbage,
Oh, right, Scott,
where's the
right.
garbage gonna go if you can build all the way to the back? And I understand that these are all pre-approved plans and those are, and that can go into that, but I'm thinking, the garbage containers, parking for each one of those things, because if you're allowing to go all the way to the extent of the lot line
Right.
and then not requiring space for those type of things.
Yeah. Yeah, so all
It
of these
seems
buildings
like
are gonna have to go through design review. This is a
Yeah.
great question. And things like waste containers for a multifamily building or a mixed use building, those are also
even restaurants.
required. Yeah, restaurant, great example. That's required part of their site plan as well.
Okay,
So as a practical matter, yes, they could build out to the edge of their property, but
but there's still,
practically they can't because they do need to provide for waste
okay,
and loading or whatever it may be.
A lot of it helps with where you're located on that property. I mean, it's one of the things we've seen when people come in and talk to us about their buildings too. It's, you know, we have those strict, you know, you have to be.
So you
Children
get-
might be wanting to have things.
sorry, not to get, not to interrupt, but you kind of get around. Correct me if I'm wrong, being stringent on those things by having it go through a design process.
We still require them, I mean, they're still required to have all those. It's just,
Yeah,
it's just
but-
where physically on the property, I think it's a little more flexible. That's what we're going for, I think.
Yeah, and lots of our developments, we already have them go through a design project, but process, but that setback is strict, they can't give them flexibility. Here, with this district, we can give them that flexibility.
That's what I'm saying, by giving them the flexibility, you can also. In a sense, regulate it because they have to go through a second stage of the design process.
Right, exactly.
And for the parking too, we've seen that a lot too, where somebody's, you know, one parking space, two parking spaces off of our code or required code. And it really is, it's very strict and you say you have to have, you know, 5 parking spaces for this size building, you got your 10 or 15 or whatever it is. This, we're gonna assume that they're gonna want some parking on there, maybe not, you know, we have street parking that works pretty well. But it's gonna allow those really strict standards, a little more flexibility on it. I think that is what we're going for, at least in this Main Street core, is to sort of allow that sort of help encourage that more dense infill type development along here.
So I just have a second question, I'm sorry. So what is the proposed plan for grandfathering buildings that are already in place?
You can cover the things again, why I mentioned those. I mean, right now, I think we're not rezoning everything right now. I think that's I think the big thing that we need to remember is this is the proposed area for the rezoning. And that's what I think a lot of the input strike is. If that spots you think, okay, this should be in here, shouldn't be in here. The initial one we'll work with the property owners, but to say we would like to get this zoned as core, this as you know, edge districts down here. It should work with those already, I think, and then we'll work with those property owners as they come in. And as people start buying up properties here, and the village has a couple properties, and we've got developers, we have people who've come in and looking at properties. You know, we anticipate they'll be asking for some of these core development standards here. To allow them to use that property more flexibly and more profitably and more, you know, make better use of those properties. So it's available for people to come in this area to say, I like my property to be zoned for district. I think Jackie mentioned initially we looked at, okay, we'll rezone the entire thing at once and make everybody, you know, this new zoning district, then have non-conforming or having grandfathered in type things. But I think we've sort of gone back and forth and that's what the input's for, and let the board members know and I guess know. But would be to make it where it's more by a request of the property owners as they start buying properties and developing properties and making it into a Main Street area, is to allow them having this tool, really having these districts as a tool for them to use to develop it. So we're not going to be forcing this on anybody right now. It's up to the board, obviously, in the future, but probably not forcing everybody's going to be now a core district and you have to build to these, you know, only these standards. But it's one of those tools that allows us a little more ability to turn into these uses.
To attract,
Yeah.
develop. And you get to what you're asking.
Yes.
Have you done any traffic studies or any discussions about lane requirements, or is that part of your?
We haven't, I know the village, and maybe Joe could speak.
We have, and that's,
Construction.
that's a whole other topic, I guess. We've done our full engineered plans of our Main Street, including the traffic studies for that. Graham put together a full redesign of the Main Street from the Y pretty much, I think, all the way down to almost to 251. We've looked at it at least. So we do have those studies. And that'll be part of if we ever get the funding for that or grant money for that, but to do the Main Street. Maybe wider corridors, wider sidewalks. It's in some of these, you can sort of see how it sort of look, we have a sort of different walkable profile for the Main Street. But yeah, they have done those plans for it.
Main and Bridge intersection. Are there any discussions? Got two corners that are available for turn lanes, which would eliminate the stacking that
Yeah.
happens every.
And that's a
single day.
combination between us and the county right now, working through those. So we do have designs for that intersection. The county has
Nobody's
plans in the
talking
future.
about it at all.
Yeah, and at this point, it's how it is, it's what we've got there. But yeah, there, in
They've got no
the
money,
future,
they say.
there's no money to do it right now to expand it. But if we do have intentions or there are plans to widen that, and make that a little more above flow through there.
People
So you don't
run
get
over the
that.
Stop sign.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, create more
Yep.
flow into the area
Yep.
and worry about it.
The other
Everything
challenge
bridge.
throughout are the bike paths.
Yep.
And how to link them and make them safer this whole distance.
Amen.
So. And there's a lot of pieces here, so.
There
taking us
wasn't a
step by
bike
step,
path before I was there.
Working through it.
Kids riding in the street.
And our goal is to try to get those all connected through and try to get those, we've got multiple applications and different grants, and there's different funding projects we work with the county. On those two, to try to work and connect these paths together. And one of the ones upcoming, I think at the last county meeting we had here is to try to get across the bridge on Bridge Street. Over the other side of the river too, so that project is 2026 now, I think they're putting it out, or 2027. The county is going to be redoing the bridge out there, and part of that project is to.
It's always a big mess.
It is. Oh, yeah, absolutely will be. That's why it's 2027, because they're also doing one Rockton coming up too, and Tollway's doing theirs, and it's all the timing on it. But to widen that out, where we actually will it won't be a full technical pedestrian recreation path, but it will be wide enough where it will be a protected walk lane on the side there. Try to connect in this side of the village to the other side of the village. Yeah. So that's coming up, and it's changed a little bit with the county, but I think 2027 is the plan. So, yeah, there's all those plans are out there and working through them. It's just a matter of the funding and timing and a lot of these roads here, it's because we've got the county roads, state roads in the village. So. Feel free to walk around, ask questions, look it up, yeah, of course. We're over here.
When are you gonna start the Hodges Run?
That is out for bid right now. It's out for bid,
Did I tell
so
you that's gonna be real ugly?